Welcome back, Wolfpack. This is lesson 4.6 on inverse trigonometry. We started trigonometry last class, and we're going to continue on today. Our essential question is still, how can you find a missing side or angle of a triangle? So we delved into the wonderful world of SOHCAHTOA last class, and we learned that with sine, we use opposite over hypotenuse, cosine, we use adjacent over hypotenuse, and tangent, we use opposite over adjacent. Remember that new sign, that means the angle measure. So to find the sine of an angle, we use opposite over hypotenuse, and so on. But now we're going to talk about when we have the sides, but we're looking for the angle itself. So that's when we're going to use the inverse trigonometry. And if you're looking at your calculator, above the word sine, you see sine -1. And above cosine, you see cosine -1. And above tangent, you will see tangent -1. Those are the inverse functions. So you have to first find what the ratio is. So you have to divide the opposite side by the hypotenuse side, and you'll get a decimal, 0 point something, 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 something. And then you'll apply the inverse sine function to that. Same thing for cosine and tangent. Now, sometimes, as an example 1, A and B, they give you the decimal already. You don't have to divide two numbers. You just have to then apply the inverse function. So the sine of some angle was 0.76. We have to figure out what that is. So what you're going to do is you're going to do sine of the inverse sine of 0.76. So on your calculator, you're going to plug in 0.76. You're going to hit the second button and then sine, so that way it's inverse sine. And I get 49.46, so on. And it says use it to your calculator to round the measures to the nearest degree. So 49.4 actually rounds to 49 degrees. So the sine of 49 degrees gives me 0.76. And if you take 49, so again, I basically replace the angle measure sine, and I replaced it with 49 degrees. Oh, sorry, that should not say 76 degrees. It's approximately 0.76. If you take 49 degrees and you hit the sine, you're going to get 0.7547, blah, 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 which rounds to approximately 0.76. Again, we don't know. We know the cosine of some angle gives us 0.15. So we're going to do the inverse cosine of 0.15, and we'll find what the angle measure is. So you type in 0.15 on your calculator, hit the second button, and cosine, and you get 81.3. Well, to the nearest degree, that's 81 degrees. So the cosine of 81 degrees, so the cosine of 81 degrees was approximately 0.15. If you take 81 and hit your cosine button, you're going to get approximately 0.15. Let's see this in action. Find the missing angle. So you still have to look at the perspective of your angle. So from the perspective of angle X, I have my adjacent side because 9 is adjacent to it. And I have my hypotenuse because 20 is the long slanted side across from the right angle. So if you remember from the beginning of our notes, if I'm using adjacent and hypotenuse, I'm going to use the cosine function. Well, I'm looking specifically for the angle, so I'm going to use the inverse cosine function. Inverse cosine of adjacent 9 over 20. The inverse function of 9 over 20. So what you have to do first is divide 9 by 20. And when you do that in your calculator, you're going to get 0.45. And then you're going to hit second cosine. That gives you the angle measure. And your calculator should say 63.25, 63, so on. This did not tell us how to round. So for your final answer, I'm okay with you guys rounding to the nearest 10. So 63.3 degrees. Okay, if we were still going to use that number, we want to make it go a little bit longer, like 4 decimal places, but we're done. We found the answer. So let's do example B now. On example B, from the perspective of this angle, 29 degrees It's my hypotenuse because it's across from the right angle. And 24 degrees is my opposite side. Well, looking back at our notes at the beginning, opposite and hypotenuse is sine. I'm trying to find the angle, so I'm going to use inverse sine. If I'm finding the side, I use the regular function, sine, cosine, tangent. If I'm finding an angle, that's when I use the inverse functions. So the sine of, and the inverse sine of opposite 24 over hypotenuse, which is 29. So first thing on your calculator, you divide, you work inside the parentheses. 24 divided by 29, press equals, you see a long big decimal. Don't clear it out, leave it in your calculator. You have 0.827586,207. Now you're going to do your inverse sine. So hit your second sine, and you should get 55.85 and round to the nearest 10. That's 55.9 degrees. And actually, they didn't use an X, they used the sign for the angle, 55.9 degrees. Okay, we will do way more of these in class. The one thing I really want you to understand is if we are looking for this length of a side, we will use the regular functions, sine, cosine, and tangent. If we're looking for the measure of an angle, that's when we use the inverses, inverse cosine, inverse sine, inverse tangent. So I want you to be very, very, very familiar with the words sine, cosine, tangent. You need to be very comfortable with when you use cosine, when you use sine, and when you use tangent. You need to do everything you can to memorize SOHCAHTOA. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse, cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, and tangent is opposite over adjacent. We will do this in class. As always, if you have any questions, please write them in your margins and ask them to me when we resume together. Have a great day, Wolfpack, and I will see you next class.